everyone, I'm Liz Smith. I'm the event director for Expona. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm thrilled to be here with Michael Fremer with Analog Planet and Stereophile to present the state of the vinyl industry. How are you doing tonight, Michael?
I'm doing good. Here in New Jersey, we didn't get too much snow. We got some. I got 5 inches or 6 inches of snow. They said 12 inches to 18, so I'm doing okay. I'm good.
That's pretty good. I'm jealous. I got about a foot of snow, so we have to dig ourselves out. But it's a good day for an online chat. Everyone's snowed in, at least on the East Coast. Okay, so we got folks joining. A lot of folks joining. All right, so before we get started, I just want to let everyone know if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to type them into the chat section, and Michael's going to take questions after the presentation, so we'll keep an eye on that and we'll do a good Q&A session at the end. So I think that's it. All right, we've got a good crew. So Michael, you ready to get started?
See, I have tapes also. I have tapes. I'm modern. Okay. Yeah, ready to go?
Yeah, let's go.
So welcome everybody. And this is our new lifestyle for the time being. These nose faces and pictures and close-ups, and I'm acclimated to it. I've got my COVID-19 hair going, which is just, I've always wanted straight hair, and now for some reason I got it. But anyway, so thank you all for coming. I was involved with the Making Vinyl Conference, which some of you know about as a B2B group that gets together once or twice a year. They've had it in Berlin, they've had it in Detroit a few times, they had it in Hollywood. And this year's was virtual, and they asked me to do an opening segment about how you know, vinyl is here to stay despite the pandemic and everything else. Vinyl is in good shape. So I also, they asked me to contact people in the industry to find out how COVID-19 has affected them. And I know a lot of you are concerned about that and how this affects the vinyl market and production and sales. So I spoke to a bunch of people, and this is what I included in that talk. They don't want me to put that on YouTube yet. I did an opening 6-minute video for them, but they don't want that on YouTube yet because they still have it up for their people that were involved in that conference, and they paid $250 to $300 to join it. So they didn't want me to put up my segment for free, so I'm not. But I'll tell you what I said. So I contacted retailers and I contacted pressing plants, and I asked them how COVID-19 has affected them. And so I also promised them I wouldn't use any names, so I'm not going to use any names. So blankety blank, this is what they said. Blankety blank has been so fortunate during this pandemic. As you know, better than any of us, I don't know necessarily better than any of us, but that was him flattering me. As you know, better than any of us, music is like medicine. As the lockdown began, so many music lovers were looking for new music to help calm their nerves to reduce stress. That was also when the behemoth retailer of everything stopped accepting new vinyl shipments to deliver essentials to everyone everywhere. At that time, we were here in city I'm not going to mention, with a huge warehouse filled to the ceiling with all the newest LP releases. We have been shipping out more packages of LP releases than at any time in our history, along with vinyl, sales of analog gear, turntables, phono cartridges, phono stages, setup and test devices, record cleaning equipment have all been exceptionally strong, limited only by what all the manufacturers can produce. Now, it's certainly not a time for boasting, as so many facets of the American economy have been devastatingly hard hit. And with so many people suffering, all of us at blankety blank are extremely grateful to have been able to keep our staff intact during this terrible time. And we couldn't be more grateful for the support of the audiophile and LP loving community. In other words, they're doing great despite the pandemic. And, you know, before I read any more of these sort of mini testimonials, that's what I'm hearing from everybody in every end of this business. You know, we're all stuck at home, and or most of us are anyway. And so what better way to entertain ourselves than to sit and listen to records? And that indeed is what a lot of people are doing. All the numbers show that. So another retailer, online retailer, we had just purchased a building at the end of 2018 to expand our online and retail business. We were about to begin remodeling when the pandemic hit and had to put us on hold. We started to see our sales drop significantly. However, business then started to pick up over the spring and summer months, and we have been doing fairly well. Our sales are now slightly up for the year, and we have resumed our remodeling and will be moving into our new remote facility next year. We have had to learn to work in the new remote world with some of our staff and had to create new procedures for shipping and receiving to maximize social distancing, but otherwise business is very good right now. So from a pressing plant. Hi, Michael, hope you're keeping well. We had a difficult spring with sharp decrease of demand for records due to the pandemic. The situation has changed significantly with summer coming, and since June and July, we operate at full speed and we feel substantial demand for our products. Surprisingly, we have not experienced any shortage of lacquer due to the Apollo fire. I wish you a successful presentation next week and stay in touch. So that presentation's over. Here's another one, another pressing plant. Hi, Michael. Here is a little bit of the COVID-19 pandemic and blankety blank pressing. Operation was halted on March 20th. Limited operations resumed on May 25th. First one shift only, then second shift added around July 1st. Full 24-hour operation resumed on August 17th. 95% of employees returned to work by August 17th or before. Customers were very sympathetic and patient. Only a small percentage of work was moved to other plants. I'd estimate less than 5%. Demand was strong before the shutdown and has remained so. We are operating at capacity 5.5 days a week. We are very concerned about the COVID situation. Our governor could order another shutdown in the very near future if this surge continues at current levels or gets worse. Another pressing plant. Hi, Michael, some bullet points. Plating from California, two plating places were mentioned. I'm not mentioning any brands and names or companies. Stopped while the state was closed down, creating a bottleneck that is just now being untangled. This set a lot of projects back. Some PVC suppliers cut the amount of material they were producing, causing shortages still felt today. March and April were terrible for us, down 50 to 60% compared with last year. July to present have been our biggest months ever. This is what I hear from everybody. Like everything was terrible in the spring. And then once it seemed as if the pandemic was letting up, which we know didn't really happen, it just cut back until the weather changed. Everybody picked up. July to present have been our biggest months ever. Chalk that up to the labels catching up for lost time. The cost of importing Euro vinyl into the US has been super expensive, and big box retailers have fully embraced vinyl and are selling so much vinyl that it's put a strain on everyone to keep up. I'm hearing that as well. COVID has required us to change our processes and staffing, which has caused delays and for a time lowered our pressing output. We're just getting back to the pre-pandemic pressing levels. Hi, Michael, nice to hear. This is another pressing plant now. Nice to hear from you. Hope you're well. COVID did hurt our business initially. The first 6 months of this year, we were down compared to last year at 10%. From July, things went very well. So we'll end the year approximately 15% up from last year. We believe this is the effect of people staying at home and not able to attend live performances. Playing a record is possibly the closest experience to this. I think we're all here because we agree that playing a good record is like being there, and streaming and these other ways of digital music can sound good, but it never gives you the sense of being there. And a lot of people in the digital world don't get that until they sit down and hear a great record being played back on a great system. And then they go, oh, I get it. Although global numbers are on their way down, COVID has had a very positive effect on these. See my figures below. Hope it stays that way for a while. Not sure though what will happen when COVID is gone and people can go to festivals again. I don't think it's going to affect too much because we're all buying records no matter what time of year or whether we have a disease going around the world. We're still buying records. Another pressing plant. We were closed for 6 weeks in March and April due to the pandemic. Fortunately, customers did still place orders and sales have grown since. But that was a challenging time. The human elements of making records have been significantly affected. Socially distancing people means using up vastly more space to assemble records than before. To keep good employees, we have had to be flexible with their needs and schedules and connecting to how COVID affects their personal lives. All of these things tend to make getting records shipped taking longer than before. Machines can keep pumping out records in spite of a pandemic. It is all the human stuff that needs to happen that is most affected. Thankfully, we have not been greatly affected by the lacquer incident. We had primarily been relying on MDC's lacquers since 2017, but we are no longer able to offer reference lacquers, which was a significant part of our business. So let me just stop here. Oh, sales are up versus 2019, which is one good thing that can be said for 2020 at blankety blank. So I know many people have been concerned about the Apollo lacquer fire, and as was I, but actually what's happened is that MDC, which is the company in Japan that was supplying lacquers, stepped up their production. And by the time the Apollo fire happened, many pressing plants and lacquer cutting facilities were getting their lacquers from MDC to begin with. So it didn't have as big an effect as we had expected, which is good. Plus, there's apparently a French company now that's going to come on board making lacquer. So the lacquer issue is really not too big a deal. The bigger problem right now is that the demand for vinyl is so big that the pressing plants can't keep up with it. I know at Chad Kassem's pressing plant, he didn't respond to this, but Chad was telling me that he can't, he put up, you know, Chad has a series of records with Verve, the Verve acoustic sounds, two records a month. They did the two Coltrane records, Love Supreme and Ballads. They pressed, I can't give you the numbers, but the numbers of records they pressed for last February's or March's release of Ballads and Love Supreme was larger than the number of records that those two titles originally sold when they were first released. Excuse me. That's not a COVID-related cough, I don't think. Anyway, they sold them out. So the numbers are incredible. And Chad now wants to put up those titles again and press more, but he can't because he has other titles to press. So everybody's back ordered. He told me he could just put up Beatles titles that he presses and press nothing else and keep busy month after month. That's how big this has gotten. So then people said to me, how about manufacturers? How are the equipment manufacturers doing? So I spoke to an esoteric manufacturer of very expensive amplifiers, who's, I won't mention the name, and they're building a new facility because they've run out of room. And you may not even have heard of this company, but its sales overseas are very big. Sales in Asia are just getting huge. Another speaker company said to me that their sales in Asia are through the roof right now, and they can't keep up with the supply of really expensive speakers. Riga, I heard from Riga. I'll mention a brand because they said I could use the name. Riga said March, April, and May, peak of the COVID panic, Riga sales suddenly dropped 60% of their normal output. But every month since has been a company record. In November, we produced 40% over our theoretical maximum. 40% over their theoretical maximum. And we still cannot satisfy demand. A lovely problem to have. That about sums it up. Please have a great weekend. So that's what I'm hearing from everybody. The pressing plants at this point can't keep up with the demand. They can't put the titles up fast enough and press them fast enough. So that's the bottleneck. And we hope, you know, maybe more presses have to be built. Maybe more pressing plants have to come online that are pressing good records. But, you know, this is a good problem for us to have. So now let me move on to something else here that I want to talk about. At the Making Vinyl event, they had a representative from Deloitte, D-E-L-O-I-T-T. I know it's a consulting firm, Deloitte. It's French. I don't do French so well. They said this is their numbers. In 2017, in America, $400 million worth of records were sold. In 2020, they think there's going to be over 500 million. And that's understating it by a great deal, he said, by about 40%. And globally, last year, in 2019, $1.3 billion. So the vinyl business has become a $1.3 billion business. And because of, he also had a very interesting statistic. He said that because more people are working at home, either permanently or part-time, and they're not commuting as much, they're listening to more vinyl at home. So you can put a record on and work. And, you know, you just have to get up to change the record. And most employers aren't concerned about you taking time to get up and put a record, turn a record over. So that was interesting. Now, the 2019 statistics that he presented were very interesting. He said that of the entire population as a whole in America, 11% of the population were listening on vinyl. That's a higher percentage than I thought, 11%. While 86% were streaming. So, and we have to be realistic. This is not, you know, a mainstream market. It's a niche. 6% purchased vinyl last year, 6% of the population. And there were 15 million US vinyl buyers last year, 15 million. And that's for both used and new. So 15 million people bought vinyl this year. 2% average listening time to vinyl compared to streaming, just 2%. So it, you know, it's niche. In the second quarter of the pandemic, their statistics showed that new vinyl buyers grew by 1 million, but used vinyl buyers declined. They're not sure why. I suspect part of it has to do with, even though you can go on Discogs and buy used vinyl very conveniently, people like to go to the record stores to buy used vinyl and see what it looks like themselves. 2 people were listening to vinyl last year. Now, how they get these numbers, I don't know. But according to them, 2 people were listening to vinyl for every person that bought vinyl. So many people are listening to records, but not buying new records. So there's a big opportunity there for the industry to get to these people who are listening on records and not buying new records. Amazon sales jumped 17% last year, which is nice, but it jumped 41% this year in the second quarter because of the lockdown. And that makes complete sense to me. Now I've got some more statistics here, dry statistics that I'll have to read to you. I'm gonna find it. Wait a second here. I've got a very busy, very tight screen here. So let me see if I can find this. Okay, here we go. This came from someone else, from an organization called Music Watch. And this was a very thorough set of statistics. And I think you'll find some of these very, very interesting, even though it makes my head swim. Yeah, 11% listen to music on vinyl, 6% purchased vinyl, 5% purchased new vinyl, and 4% purchased used vinyl. New vinyl buyers grew during the pandemic, but 2 million fewer used buyers. And I told you the Amazon number. Here's an interesting statistic. Everybody buys vinyl. This is a pie chart that I can't put up to show you, but 13 to 17-year-olds account for 7% of vinyl purchases. 18 to 24-year-olds account for 13% of vinyl purchases. So if you add up the 13 to 24 segment, you're talking about 20% of vinyl purchases are from 13 to 24. So when they say this, old people are only one people buying vinyl, not true. 25 to 34-year-olds account for 19% of buying of vinyl, and 35 to 44 account for 18%. So if you add those two up, 25 to 44-year-olds account for 37% of vinyl purchases. And then 45 to 54 was 20%, and 55 and up is 23%. So it's a pretty evenly spread group of people. That's really good because it tells you it's not skewed up towards the elderly like me. It's all up and down the map, which is fantastic. Vinyl buyers cross all age segments, higher income and education levels. 51% are male. That means that 49% are female. You know, and that's interesting. 49% of the buyers are ladies and girls. And yet you go to a hi-fi show and it's a tiny percent. This shows you it's a tremendous opportunity for the audio business to engage these youngsters in high performance audio. doing it yet though. Let's see what else it says here. Percentage of vinyl buyers by generational segment. 22% are Gen Z, 28% are millennials, 26% are Gen X, and 22% are baby boomers. And that's interesting because I think most of us thought that the boomers represented the biggest segment of the market, but it's pretty evenly spread. 91K household income. That's a high number. 38% are college and post-college graduates. 40% are white collars. 81% are Caucasian. I thought that was interesting. 45 to 54-year-old vinyl fans listen 3 days per week and average 90 minutes per session, which I think is very interesting because from my understanding, people who listen to digital average 6 minutes before they have to turn it off and do something else. Okay, I'm only kidding. That's a joke. So let's see. The lightest listeners, this is not by weight. What are they talking about? The lightest listeners are the younger people, and the heaviest listeners, not by weight, probably by weight also, but are 45 to 54. They listen for the longest period of time. I'm bad with statistics and numbers. It's not my strong suit. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Not all, but all vinyl buyers are not equal. Heavy buyers skew 18 to 34. Fewer 45 to 54-year-olds are heavy buyers. I thought that was interesting. Heavy buyers versus lighter buyers. You know, that's, I don't want to go through this. It's making my head spin. Nearly 1 in 4, oh, this is interesting though. Nearly 1 in 4 heavy vinyl buyers are students. I think that's pretty interesting. But all vinyl buyers are not equal. Heavy buyers skew 18 to 34. Fewer 45 to 54-year-olds are heavy buyers. Then in terms of the kind of music they buy, corresponding to age profile, 80 to 90s, indie, R&B, classic, AC, and jazz skew to light buyers. Alternative, rap, and dance music are more popular among heavy buyers. I'm going to repeat that. 80 to 90s music, indie, R&B, classical, alternative, and jazz skew to light buyers. Alternative, rap, and electronic dance music is more popular among heavy buyers. I think that's pretty fascinating. Here's another interesting stat. Collecting is a key and growing motivator, but fewer are adding because of desired releases, sensory and sound quality factors. I think that may be true of the general population of record buyers, but I know of the people that are watching this, and among the people I deal with on my website and through Stereophile, we're buying to a great degree because of also how it sounds. So when they talk to these people about why they buy, who are buying more vinyl, why buy more vinyl, 55+% said, I'm filling in my collection for future albums that I like. 35% said, I like the sense of feel that you get holding a vinyl record. 31% said, I like liner notes, cover art that you can only get with vinyl. 29% said, my vinyl collection will appreciate in value. In other words, they're buying records as a investment instrument. I think that's nuts. I mean, it's true that the value of used records has gone through the roof. If you go to Discogs and just type in some of the records that you have in your collection, you would be amazed at what the value of some of these records is. Like I typed in a Cure album that I've got from the 90s, and I thought it was like a $5, $10 record. And in mint condition, the Disintegration by The Cure is a $100 record. And I've got a promo copy with the promo information, the 8x10 photo. That's probably worth $125. I thought that was a $10 record. So don't get rid of any records you've got until you look at the value of them, because it's amazing. 28% buy more records because they consider themselves avid vinyl collectors. Oh, 23% said it sounds much better than CDs. You know, only 23%. I'll take that as a moral victory anyway. I got a turntable record player for the first time, 22%. And we know what that turntable probably consists of, but good luck to them. I got to turn to more artists that I liked released music on vinyl, 18%. I thought that was interesting. And it sounds much better than streaming. That was 17%. So, facts about vinyl buyers for your next virtual cocktail party. They spend $400 annually on recorded and live music, more than double the average music streamer. Let's see what else it says here. Yeah, that's 3 times. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. Thoughts to take away from this interesting visual thing that I wish I could put up, but I can't. They don't want me to do that. They continue to see healthy vinyl market even during COVID-19. It's bifurcated, but that's a good thing for targeting key demo and genres. Think about improving take rates and continuity, reward programs, loyalty, heavy listeners. Collectability and sensuality. Is sound quality waning? No, that I don't think so, because the numbers went down of the number of people who thought that was why they bought records. Inherent value in vinyl buyers equal bundling opportunities. And that was from Music Watch. So, all right, so I think that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about for the first 20 minutes or so of this. And before we take questions, I just want to summarize what I think we learned. We learned that the vinyl business is very strong at this point. It's doing well. It's playing catch up in a lot of ways. I ordered Taylor Swift's new record. It took me like 6 months to get it. You could stream it and you can get the CD right away, but it took 6 months to get it because of getting it pressed and getting it distributed. It's a really nice record, Folklore, and I recommend it. And when I hear people my age say, I don't want to care what Taylor Swift has to say, but you know, if you can listen to Joni Mitchell's Blue, which I'm sure many of you can, then you should listen to Taylor Swift's Folklore. It's a really interesting album that's a very similar kind of subject matter. So I thought I would show you some weird records, and then we'll take questions. Okay, I just took a few out here to show you weird and offensive records. So here's an interesting record. How to Talk Hip. It was on Mercury, and it's. I know some of you really do want to learn how to talk hip. It has a complete guide to. You can't stream this, obviously. The words to use, how to use them, how to like hold your body, man, you know, and how to like use like every other word, like, and how to speak hip, and it's cool, and politics and hip, cool in theory and practice, you know, metaphysics and hip. Anyway, that's just a fun record. Here's Elektra Records. Back in the day, put out this 10-inch record of how to calibrate your system, make sure your RIAA is working right, and making sure that your system has flat frequency response. I thought this was an interesting kind of record in the early days of hi-fi, which I don't do that because I don't care. I know my system sounds good. Here's a good one. Behind closed doors at a recording session. Warner Brothers takes you, look, they have a cop guarding the closed door where the recording's taking place. And they take you behind closed doors. And this is a great picture. Isn't that great? And I'm sure there are some people here, if they look closely, they know who's conducting and where it was conducted. It looks like it's radio recorders, or maybe Sunset Sound, where Brian Wilson did Pet Sounds. I don't know. I'm just talking off the top of my head, and I don't know who's conducting there. But it looks very familiar, and it looks like it was a nice stereo thing. Anyway, they have all kinds of pictures, and they have engineers, and it's supposed to be at Warner Brothers Studios. I don't think Warner Brothers had a studio at that point in time. You know, they had a record label that they started, but they had a film studio, but I don't think they had a recording studio. I got some more interesting things. Just a couple more minutes, and then we'll take questions. Oops, I dropped something. Wait a second. You know, in the 50s, in the 1950s, there was a lot of records being sold to vinyl fans with sex. They don't do that anymore because they realize that most of the people that we know who buy aren't interested in that anymore. But anyway, this was a whole series of records on the Essex Ultraphonic label called the I Love series. So this is I Love, and this was, I collect these, I admit it. Here's Take Me to Faraway Places. Here's I Love with Nori Paramore and his orchestra. And that was recorded in England in the I Love series. And here's the alto sax of Jay White, Takes Me to Faraway Places. Isn't that great? I love this stuff. And I love the alto sax of Jay White. Isn't that wonderful? Okay, say that. And really, my whole place is falling apart here with what I'm doing this for you. Here's a record. If you look carefully at this record, it's called, the group was called Funky Porcini. And if you look carefully at this record, all of this equipment here spells out Funky Porcini. But I'm not going to hold it up long enough for you to see that, but trust me, it does. This is the first Mobile Fidelity album in the UK. They licensed it to Argo Records. And some of you know this, but you know, Mobile Fidelity, the name is because Mobile Fidelity started out by recording steam engines. So that's where that came from. And this was the first Mobile Fidelity Argo in the UK. This is Barbra Streisand's first record. This is the International Ladies Garment Workers Union musical. And before she did her first album, she did that. Here's How to Make Automobiles from Volkswagen, put out our record. And it's a jazz record, actually. Here's how to teach your children about the wonders of sex with Dr. and Mrs. J.C. Wilkie. Bidding starts at 3 cents. And this is the Freedomland soundtrack. Freedomland was an amusement park built in New York by the Zeckendorf family. And one of the Zeckendorfs is actually one of the biggest Beatles collectors in the world. And he's got everything that the Beatles ever did, just about. And the family decided to build an amusement park to rival Disneyland, forgetting somehow that it closes in the winter because it gets cold. And they built this amusement park, and I actually went to it, and I have this. And you go there every hour on the hour. They'd reproduce the San Francisco earthquakes, the Chicago fire. It was a terrible place. And now I will show you the 2 most offensive records in my collection. And if you're offended, sorry. Okay, so then there's this one. This is The Sensuous Black Woman by the Madame. I will not read to you what is written in the back of this because it's horrible. But what's interesting is this was, the executive producer was Jules Bahari, and the Bahari brothers were these 3 Hungarian Jews who came over here and started Kent Records. They discovered B.B. King worked with them. They had a lot of people that worked with them that they helped discover and foster. And then they did this for some reason. And another guy who produced this is a guy named T. Tony. And T. Tony produced the original Dolomite movie. You may have seen Eddie Murphy's I Am Dolomite. So the 3 Bahari brothers are actually portrayed in that movie. And the guy on this record, T. Tony, was the producer of the original Dolomite movie. These are things you don't learn from streaming. One last thing, and then we'll take questions. This is easily the most offensive record in my collection. This is God Save the Queens. Okay, is there a more offensive cover? I mean, Sandy Barron did this for A&M Records, and they were ahead of their time. They were trying to do an enlightened pro-gay comedy album, but could there be a more offensive and a stereotypical cover than that? Birkenstocks, etc. Anyway, that's it. All right, I'm done with the amusing part of the thing. So let's take some questions. So I think, Liz, are you there?
I'm back.
You stayed? They through all of that. Yes.
Right. Well, thank you for that. That was some really interesting
You sure?
data that, yeah, that's really good data that you shared. I'm encouraged, and I find, everyone's behavior changing because of the pandemic, and listening more it's encouraging. Anyway, so let's dive into everyone else's questions. All right, so first up, we have one that says, I'm wondering if the supply chain issues that are having an effect on other industries will lead to scarcity and rising costs of styluses.
Well, I know that I don't know why that would be. I know that the major manufacturers are doing fine. I mean, companies like Ortofon, which has an industrial type of operation where they turn these things out. I've been there, and it's an assembly line. It's automated. They could just keep sending. They're happy to do that, and they're doing very, very well. I know the more specialty companies, Lyra and Soundsmith and those kind of companies, they're all handmade, and they've had back orders going for a long time, and they're more so than ever now. Even on their most expensive, people say a $13,000 cartridge. This is, and it wears out. Who's buying this? They can't keep up with the demand for those things. So I think at both ends of the market, things are actually fine, because at the lower end where things are automated, they're just turning them out. There was a beryllium shortage at one point, but that's been taken care of. There was certain, materials have shortages, but at this point, from what I see, everything seems to be fine. So.
Okay. And this is kind of a similar question. Do you see an increase in prices for vinyl coming because of COVID?
I don't, because the pellets aren't in supply at this point. There was a problem, when the pandemic hit, everybody was hit, including some of the pellet manufacturers who had to lay off people, and people had to stay home. But now it seems to be back, and business seems to be back. Now, whether this latest episode of the pandemic that we're seeing now, because people didn't pay attention to science, whether that's going to have another impact on this and create what happened in March and April, we won't know for a couple of months. So I don't know. It's bad.
Okay. All right. So the next question I have is, will the Tone Poet series continue for the foreseeable future?
Oh yes, I know that, and Joe is here. The Tone Poet is here, actually, and yeah, and they, that series got started, and it was like, well, let's see what happens. We'll make expensive records. Well, I don't think anybody's going to buy expensive records, and guess what? They bought expensive records, and they do extremely well, and they have a schedule now planned out for the next year or two at least, and they're busy cutting and getting ready for those releases, and they're great, of course. They're the same as the more costly Music Matters. The Music Matters series that Mr. Tone Poet was involved with has stopped, and the reason why they're doing these Tone Poet series is because those were so successful at a higher price, and now they're producing similar records for less money, and they're extremely. I know a lot of people who buy every one that they do. If it comes out, they don't even know what the music is, but they buy it to collect them, because it's a thing to collect, like baseball cards, except you can play them. It's better than stamps and better than baseball cards. The records, you collect them, they appreciate in value, and you can play them and enjoy them, unless you're really insane and you keep them sealed. But that's just crazy. Yeah, there's going to be way more of those. And also this Verve acoustic sound series that the first year is underway now is extremely successful. There was a Verve Impulse series cut from digital last year or 2 years ago that was extremely unsuccessful. I can't tell you what the numbers of those were, but it was embarrassingly teeny tiny. This series, which are cut from tape, done the right way, they're selling out. Every one of them is sold out at this point. The Nina Simone one that's out this month, the I Put a Spell on You, sold out. You still find copies around. Sold out meaning it's gone from the pressing plant, it's gone to all the distributors. You can still find a couple of copies, but pretty much it's sold out. And it's so great for Nina Simone's heirs, to see her music being consumed again and appreciated. And those are great records, really good records.
Okay, great. Okay, so next we have kind of more of a gear question. Paul asks, I have a rather good turntable, but not a great tone arm. How important is a great tone arm?
You know, this is a chain, and every link in the chain is important. But in some ways, it's all important. But as I, unfortunately discovered, a really great tone arm makes a huge difference. And the transducer, the cartridge, is really key to the whole thing, because that is the biggest difference. The transducer, the phono cartridge and the speakers, that's where the greatest variations are. The electronics have gotten really good at a variety of price points. Turntables have actually gotten better generally. And but the arm makes a big difference. I talk to people all the time that are upgrading their arms if they have the ability to do that, and it makes all of it makes a difference. And the idea that we've finished with the technology and all you're getting to hear now are differences, different, it's all different flavors. No, that's absolutely not true. At this point, better cartridges are being manufactured, better arms are being manufactured, the materials that they're using are more sophisticated. And the people that invented this whole thing, 50, 60, well, I'm not talking about from Edison's days. I mean, the modern stereo era, let's say from the 1950s, they had no idea what they were producing, the records that they were making. We're hearing them now like for the first time, and it keeps getting better and better. And that was one of the annoying things when CDs came out. It was like, oh, analog's finished, and now we're moving on to this digital thing because it's new and it's better. And vinyl is going to stay here and not get any better. And I hear from most people too, oh, I was into vinyl in the 60s and it had this problem, that problem. What about now? Well, it hasn't gotten any better. It's the same thing. It's gotten a lot better. Anybody out there who's up their system knows that you can get out of a record now, it's crazy. It just keep hearing more and more in those records. Okay, I'm finished.
Okay. Okay, let's just take, okay, so this question is, the peak year for LP sales was in 1973 with 228 million sold. What quantity is projected to sell in 2020?
The number?
Yeah.
I don't recall the number, but I know that in this last period, the dollar volume of records surpassed for the same period of time what it did in the 70s. It was the biggest selling period of records in terms of dollar volume. Like $1.5 million worth of records were sold in 1 week in between Black Friday and the next week, which is amazing. And of course, this year, vinyl by dollar volume outsold CDs. And that is another amazing number. Of course, it was misreported in CNN where they said vinyl outsold CDs. So the number of records sold did not approach what CDs sold. The number of records sold was much smaller than CDs, but the dollar volume was much bigger because, as we know, records are overpriced and it's a ripoff. No, not really. It's more expensive to produce, more expensive to ship, everything else. But that's an amazing number. And CD sales are dropping and vinyl sales are rising. So, but let's face it, streaming rules over everything and will, because it's pretty much free when you think about what it costs to stream. And streaming is the best listening booth to buy new records that I can think of. I stream, and when I get up in the morning, then I stream music. And what I do is I listen to what I like and then I buy it. Like I bought, I got the CDs of the Lang Lang Goldberg variations, really good recording. I got the vinyl, and the vinyl sounds more like a real piano. I'm sorry, it does. Now people say, well, you're hearing distortions. I don't care. It sounds more like a real piano. That's what I care about. So.
Okay. This is from Dan. Do you have any data or gut feel on how many new releases, meaning new music, was recorded digitally and then mastered for vinyl versus being 100% analog recording mastering process?
It's really easy to give you the figures without knowing them, because most everything being recorded today is being recorded digitally. We know that. But there's a few caveats in it. There's a really good article that if you go to, I wish I had published this myself, but I didn't. Part-Time Audiophile has an article written by a mastering engineer whose name escapes me at the moment. but he masters for vinyl and he masters digitally as well. And he explains why a record cut from a digital master can sound better, not just than a CD or a stream version, but then the master itself. What can be done to that master to make it sound better on a record? I know that sounds counterintuitive to many people, but he explains why it's true. And I think that's a really interesting thing to read. So when you hear people say, if it's a digital recording, I will not buy it on vinyl, you really need to hear some before you make that decision. And, you know, recordings are produced to stream a certain way and to be on Apple Music a certain way, and then to be turned into a record a certain way. And things can be done to produce the record that make it sound the best. If you listen to Bill Frisell's Valentine on vinyl, which is digital recording, and then listen to the stream version of it, I don't care how good your DAC is, that record sounds better, sounds best, in my opinion. So don't shut out your buying choices simply because it's from a digital source. And most new recordings these days are digital. We have to accept that. And they're better. You know, they've learned to use Pro Tools in a much better way now. And there are some incredibly good digital recordings. And when they're put on vinyl, they can sound even more incredible.
So a couple questions came in kind of about quality, like quality control, and also like older stuff. Like one person said that a lot of their older stuff has inner groove distortions, and there seems to be a lot of chatter about quality control and pressings and quality control just at like pressing plants. Do you have any commentary on that, like on, I guess, quality control?
It's very hard to press a good record. We know that. You know, that any good records are pressed is a miracle, because it's a very difficult thing, especially uniformly one after another. If you're hearing inner distortion, it's probably as much your turntable setup as anything. I mean, we know that as you get to the inner grooves, there's going to be more, not necessarily distortion that you can hear. There is more distortion, but you shouldn't be able to hear it as much as it's there. And the high frequencies are going to roll off because the waveforms are getting scrunched up because it's getting smaller. But you should not really be able to hear actual distortion. If you're really hearing gross distortion, it's more of a setup issue than anything. As far as quality control of records, you know, I did the QC for the Tom Petty Wildflowers box, and believe me, that was an honor and a pleasure. So I got test pressings from Record Industry in the Netherlands of the whole 9 LP box set, and those records were virtually perfect. I mean, flat and quiet and no pops and clicks. And I also got the box set, the finished box set, and it wasn't like anybody proofed them for me. And those records were all the same way, perfect. The records coming out of RTI and QRP and Record Industry and other pressing plants around the world, and GZ Media, I buy a lot of records. You know, I get some records sent to me, but the records that are sent to me are still sealed copies. And I've had almost no defective records, very few records that were pressed off center. There's a slight bit of off center pressing, and very few warped records, especially now in the winter. The summer records, you know, they're being left out on loading docks in the summer. There's going to be issues with that. And I don't know what we can do about that except educate FedEx and UPS and the post office, but good luck to that. But I don't, you know, even United, which is the most problematic pressing plant. And, you know, I'll say that because it's true. And they're trying hard to make better records. And like the Bob Dylan record that they pressed, Rough and Rowdy Ways, the optimal pressing sounds much better because the plating was better. But it was a pretty good job. It was a flat 180 gram record that I bought, and I bought it. And they're trying to make better records. And all you can do is hope that people will make better records and use better quality pellets and do better plating, because plating is really the secret sauce of the whole thing. But I think quality is up. I think the people that are selling records have a better idea of what they're getting back in defects but I haven't really seen it in my own buying and record reviewing lifestyle.
Okay.
How about this?
Okay, so we got two questions here. One says, are Taylor's records AAA or AAA? I don't know what that term is.
No, they're digital recordings.
Okay.
Folklore was recorded. Aaron Dester from the National was involved in it, and Antonoff, who grew up the road here from me. They all played on it, and they all were in different studios. That's one of the miracles of the current situation. So it was done digitally, but I'm telling you, Pro Tools has gotten a lot better. They've learned how Pro Tools as a software package has gotten better, and the people using it have gotten better, because if you play Folklore on vinyl, well pressed, which it was, you won't hear the usual digital, the digital artifacts. You won't hear them. It's a really nice sounding record by any stretch of the imagination. It's good. Now, if it was done all analog correctly, then I bet you it would sound more to our liking. But those days are pretty much over, with minor exceptions. There's a great direct-to-disc series done at Record Industry in Harlem. They have a studio upstairs, and I highlighted some of those on Analog Planet. You should check those out. Gary Bartz did one with a kind of a Afro funk band, and it's awesome. Just cut direct to disc. Those are good. There's a bunch of those. So there's lots to buy right now of all kinds of music and cutting and recording techniques.
Okay, so then we got a couple questions like this. One from someone talking about trying to get their fellow music fans excited about investing in a quality turntable or phono stage and listening, and also someone who's on the sales side asking, like, if you were selling, or if you were trying to get one of your friends to get excited about turntables, like, what would you say? Like, what would you suggest?
Well, the first thing I have to tell you is, in that report from the Music Watch people, they claim that half of the people buying records don't play them. It's crazy. They just put them on the wall, and so there's this Vinyl Alliance that's formed, a group of people trying to promote vinyl. They need to have a subdivision called Off the Wall, the Off the Wall group, to get these people to take the records off the wall and play them. That's one of the things we have to do. So, the first thing is, don't buy a plastic turntable. Don't buy one of these $70. What's wrong with the picture of buying a $50 copy of Dark Side of the Moon and playing it on a $70 turntable? That's a big problem. That's a serious, serious problem. And when people say my first turntable is going to be one of those, Crosleys, and then I'll move up from there. Well, how many plays is the record going to get on that turntable before it's not really going to be playable anymore? I don't know. I have not done that test, but those are toys, and they're not great first turntables. Still, you can buy a $200 turntable. That will do the job. You can buy the least expensive Riga and the least expensive Project, or the Audio Technicas that are really good. Someone's calling me. It's the United States calling me. Should I pick it up? I don't think so. You can get a decent turntable that's not going to ruin your records, that's going to give you what the vinyl experience is about, for a couple of $100 with a cartridge installed. Comes ready to play. So that's what I would tell people if they want to get someone into it. One of the inexpensive Projects, one of the inexpensive Rigas, one of the inexpensive Audio Technicas. They're really pretty good as a starter turntable. And don't buy a plastic turntable.
For sure. I'm not sure if you covered this when you were talking about the data. Do we know, or do you know how much vinyl sales is, I'm losing the word, like vintage or like resales versus new?
The used market's very big right now. I don't have a percentage, but Discogs had the best year they ever had last year. Huge numbers of records. I've got the number here someplace about how many records that was. I can look it up. If you want to wait a second, I'll try to look it up. Wait 1 second. I'll see if I can find it. Let's see. Oh, for some reason, the wrong thing's coming up. This person sends me stuff. That's the entire message. Let's see what they say. Oh, here we go. Oh, 11 million vinyl records were sold via Discogs this year. How's that? 11 million records, new and used, because Discogs sells new records too. There are a lot of record stores have like virtual stores on Discogs. That's 11 million records. That's pretty good. And then they have the most expensive records that were sold, and those are amazing. Like one record called Morning Phase. You ever hear Morning Phase? Morning Phase sold for, it's a psych record from the 60s, 1971, sold for $10,461. 10,000. October was 6,500. Led Zeppelin, the Led Zeppelin box that Classic Records did, the Road box. Some of you know that record. They put out a box, and it was 45 RPM, single-sided, 200 gram in a box. And when it first came out, it was like $700. And I remember people saying, I'm not spending $700 for our Led Zeppelin box set. It's ridiculous. So it sold for $6,100 last week. It's hilarious. Anyway, that's all. So that's a lot of records.
That's a lot of records. Okay, I think this will probably be our last question. It's kind of a fun one. What are your 3 best sounding vinyl records of all time?
I did a 3 video series with Ken McAuliffe, who writes for Stereophile, and those are on the Analog Planet website. If you scroll down, they're embedded. It's on his YouTube channel, but they're embedded on my channel. I brought out a whole lot of records, and I was you'd think I was on narcotics, but I wasn't. I probably should have been. I was on fire, and I pull them out, and if you watch that, these are not necessarily my greatest records. I just pulled out a bunch of great stuff. So I'll show you. I can pull out one. Wait a second. Can I go a little bit over? Okay. So this is an incredible record. If you've ever heard this record, it's a Porgy and Bess with Lauren Mazel and the Cleveland Orchestra. Kenneth Wilkinson engineered this, and this was reviewed by Harry Pearson in the Absolute Sound. At the beginning of this record, it's like a stage presentation. So a guy throws dice, as part of Porgy and Bess. And Harry Pearson's review said, this recording is so good, you could see the numbers on the dice, which I thought was great. Anyway, so I had these Russian guys. They came to visit. They were at a store event that I did a turntable setup seminar in New York at Stereo Exchange. And when it was over, these 2 guys come in and they say, Mr. Fremer, we don't like a vinyl. We are here for something else, but we see you here. Your room, you have boomy bass in your room. I can see the measurement, boomy bass. I said, I don't have boomy bass. I would rather have no bass than boomy bass. No, but we see bump in the. I said, why don't you guys come over, bring your CDs, whatever you want to test equipment, whatever you want to do, and you tell me whether I have boomy bass. So these 2 Russian guys came over, and they sit there and they brought their CDs and they're playing, they're whispering to each other. And when they were finished, the guy goes, you're right, no boomy bass, you have good bass. I said, yeah, I have good bass because I couldn't put up with boomy bass. Don't let your eyes tell you what you hear. That's the biggest mistake you can make, is to see something and decide how it sounds. I said, let me play you a record. Goes, no, we don't like vinyl. Said, you're here, I'll play a record. So I put this Porgy and Bess on, and they kept sitting there looking back to making sure I wasn't fooling them, that it was actually a record. And when the side was over, they go, that's vinyl? We had no pops, no clicks. That's beautiful. We're going to get that on a CD. I said, you get the CD. It won't, I promise you, it will not sound like that record. It's not going to even be remotely as good. So a couple of weeks later, the guy calls me and goes, we got CD. You're right. A CD does not sound like that record. Why is that? I said, I don't know. I don't care, but it does not. So if you can find a copy of this, it's outstanding. And I'll show you one more. This is one of the great Decca's La Fille Malgardie. It's a very proper English kind of classical music for a ballet production. It's a sonic. If you want to know if your speakers can image, or sound staging, imaging, timbral accuracy, this record is incredible. And I have multiple copies because I'm a record coveting whore. What can I tell you? So this is an original fold-over copy. I got it's a very expensive record. If you go on and look for a copy of it, it's very, very costly. And I went to, one of the things I do when I go buy record shopping is I go to like a classical record specialist and buy rock. So I went to Rough Trade in the UK, and there was a wideband Decca mint copy in the classical music section of Rough Trade, which had like 10 records, and it was one pound. It was like, yes, it's great. That's an incredible record. But one last thing, but I have to run out and get it. Can I run out and get something?
Sure.
I'm not going for a pizza. I want to show you a record because this is going to come out again. I have a feeling. I'm back. This is one of the records that I showed in those 3 videos. So this is Light and Hopkins Strikes, and it's on Tradition Everest Records. The cover is terrible. It looks really bad. And I look on the back, and it's got Jimmy Bond on bass, Earl Palmer on drums. If you don't know who Earl Palmer is, look him up. And Don Crawford on harmonica and Light and Hopkins. And I look on here, and I see it was recorded in Los Angeles on October 4th and 5th, 1965. You have to work really hard in 1965 to make a bad sounding recording in Los Angeles. I mean, it was like, that was a period of time when studios were incredible and everything that was recorded was great. So this was like $1 or something. And I put it on and it's spectacular. So there are 2 versions of this. There's one of Verve Folkways or Verve Forecast, and then this one. They're both incredible. If you find a copy of this, it's amazing, sonically spectacular. It's Light and Hopkins, it's great. And I just found this out yesterday from someone who knew all the people that were involved in this, that when they went in the studio, they recorded like 30 songs. And there's another album that was recorded the same time that came out. I just got the name of that, but I'm not going to tell you that because I want to get it before I tell you about it, because I don't want you to buy all the copies of it up. But it's the same session, and I'm sure it's going to be equally incredible. And I think the Electric Recording Company is going to try to get this, license it to release it. So there'll be a $450 version that you probably won't want to buy. But anyway, okay.
Okay. Well, I guess that's our time. Michael, thank you so much for doing this tonight. I think everyone enjoyed it, and I really appreciate you taking the time. And thank you everyone who logged in.
For watching, and I love doing this. I could just do this all day and night and not write anymore, just talk, because I like it.
Oh, it's fun. A lot of fun. And everyone, if you'd like to watch this again, we'll be posting this on our YouTube channel next week. And I'm planning some additional topics for 2021. So be on the lookout for announcements. And everyone have a great night and happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays, everybody. Yeah, so, not Passover, it's Hanukkah. Right? Happy Hanukkah, Christmas. I really,
all the holidays.
Before you hang up, I just think now on television, they say season's greetings. I'm annoyed by that. They should say Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Passover, and Denali, whatever the Islamic holiday is. Everybody say it all. Say it all. It's fine. It's all good. I don't want to sound like Trump here, but it's all good.
It's all good. Happy all the holidays. I'll stick with that. All right. Bye.